Welcome to Navigating Hope, your compass to health empowerment. I'm Dr. Jamie Hope, steering you through healthcare, overcoming overwhelm, personal goals, and emergencies. We'll navigate the healthcare maze with actionable insights and real-world advice, unlocking the secrets to a healthier, more vibrant life. Join us to take control of your well-being and make informed decisions for your health and your future. Stay with us as we unravel the mysteries of medicine, wellness, and life's unforeseen challenges, helping you bypass the ER with a dose of knowledge. Stay tuned till the end of the episode with a recap of your actionable insights and a free gift. Let's chart a course to your well-being together. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode. I am so excited. I've been waiting for this recording. I have today Terry Tucker. So I'm going to read the bio here. Remember to stick around at the end for your key takeaways and free gift. Terry Tucker is a motivational speaker, author, and international podcast guest on the topics of motivation, mindset, and self-development. And we were talking before this started, like, how does one come to the credibility of being able to do these things? Well, here it is. In his professional career, Terry has been a marketing executive, a hospital administrator, a SWAT team hostage negotiator, a high school basketball coach, that one might have been harder, a business owner, and for the past 12 years, a cancer warrior, which has resulted in the amputation of his foot in 2018 and his leg in 2020. He's the author of the book Sustainable Excellence, 10 Principles to Leading Your Uncommon and Extraordinary Life. That is the kind of street cred I can get behind. Terry, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, Jamie, thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you today.
There are so many places. It's where do we even begin? So we were having so much fun in our pre-recording conversation. I finally had to stop and say, we need to just hit record because this is gold. So I'm going to go a little bit off script here because you and I are like that. And so you have worked in some incredibly high stress, high stakes professions. I mean, SWAT, hostage negotiation, and all of these things. So what drew you to those kind of professions, and how did you stay physically and mentally healthy while you're in these scenarios?
That's a great question. I guess I should give you a little bit of a backstory.
Yes, please.
My grandfather was a Chicago police officer from 1924 to 1954 and was actually shot in the line of duty with his own gun. It was not a serious injury. He was shot in the ankle. But my dad, who was an infant when his dad was shot, this was 1933, always remembered the stories my grandmother told of that knock on the door of Mrs. Tucker, grab your son, come with us, your husband's been shot. So when I expressed an interest in sort of following in my grandfather's footsteps, my dad was absolutely not. You're going to college, you're going to major in business, you're going to get out, get a great job, get married, have 2.4 kids, and live happily ever after. But that's what my dad wanted me to do. That's not what I felt my purpose was. So when I graduated from college, my father and my grandmother were both dying of different forms of cancer. So I had a choice. I could have said, hey, Dad, I know you're dying, but you know what? I'm going to go blaze my own trail and do my own thing. Or out of love and respect for you, I will do what you want me to do. So understanding the backstory, my resume looks a little bit more like a Super Bowl didn't go off in a room and it's all over the place. So my first two jobs were in business because that's what my father wanted me to do. And I'm very grateful that I took those jobs because I learned a lot. But then I made that pivot when I was 37 years old and became a police officer, which is pretty late to be getting into that kind of a game. But why did I get into SWAT and things like that? Well, usually in police departments or law enforcement agencies, the SWAT officers are usually the best officers with the best training and the best equipment. And I've always in my life wanted to be part of the best. So I knew it was high stress. I knew it was a lot of fun, but I also had the support of my family behind me. So I thought, you know what, let's do this and see what happens. And it was the best 4.5 years of my life, I think.
Oh, wow. Absolutely amazing. And that training had to have been grueling. Were there ever times that you're going through that journey that you wanted to quit?
No, No, that was my purpose. That was, I can't
Ah,
wait to get up this morning and find out what we're going to do today. And I was very green. We trained as negotiators as in scenarios. We would do different scenarios, and then we had a psychologist that worked with us, and we learned in the debrief. Be like, hey, did you ever think that person might have been schizophrenic and off their medicine? Oh no, I never thought about that. It's that how you're learning. But like, if you give you a kind of funny story, so my very first, negotiation, simple hostage taker in a room behind a locked door. I spent the entire time talking to the hostage. And afterwards, they're like, you realize we're trying to talk to the hostage taker to get the hostage out. So probably ignoring the hostage taker, not a very good move. I'm like, okay, I got a whole lot to learn here in this option. And I did. But it was, I love that. What did we learn? How can we learn? How can we get better? How can we grow? And so it was just great from a law enforcement point of view, but you can also, what we learned as negotiators, apply to how you and I communicate, how we communicate with our families, our friends, and things like that. It was a great lesson in communication.
oh, I mean, these are life skills. I feel like this should be more broadly taught in general. And what I heard in there, it just a nugget of gold is that even when it got hard, the reason you didn't feel like quitting and you persevered and you kept going through is because you were so deeply connected with your why and with your purpose. So for anyone who's going through a struggle right now, really staying connected and keeping your eye on that North Star, and that'll give you even a tenth of the enthusiasm that Terry approaches just everyday life, which is what I love that about you. So you have taken these skills, these negotiation skills. Now, what can our listeners who will hopefully for their sakes never be in a hostage situation, what kind of the communication skills can we apply in our normal lives?
Sure. So I remember when I first started, I was given a formula on how we communicate, not just negotiators, but all of us, how we communicate with each other. And the formula was 7-38-55. So 7% of how we communicate a message are the words that we use. And think how many times in your life you're like, oh, I wish I hadn't said that, or should I have said something differently? That's only 7% of how a message is communicated. 38% is the tone of voice that you use with that message. And then 55%, more than half of how we communicate a message, is our body language and our facial expressions. So understanding that from what we did as negotiators, if somebody was barricaded with a gun in a room, I was not in the room with that person. I could very well be blocks away. So I didn't have the luxury of saying something and have the person or see the person kind of roll their eyes and be like, oh, what an idiot. I can't believe he said that to me. So we had to get good at figuring things out, certainly based on what people were saying, but also what they weren't saying and how they were saying it. And one of the ways we did that is what we used to call tactical empathy. And I think you can get rid of the word tactical and just talk about empathy. Empathy is help me to understand where you're coming from. Again, the big word there is understand, not necessarily agree. I mean, if I'm negotiating with a homicide suspect who just killed 3 people, I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, I totally get why you did that, but what that does is by having that person understand that you get them, you're building trust. And when I can build trust, I can change behavior. And the other thing I'll say about this is we used to use how and what questions. So we stayed away from why questions. So in other words, well, Jamie, why did you do that? Oh, wait a minute. Is he accusing me of something? I can get to the same answer if I say, well, Jamie, what got us to this point? That's a much softer question that doesn't make you feel threatened, but gets me the same information that I need. And how questions are, people would say, I want a car out in front of the building before 5 o'clock. And I would say, well, how am I supposed to do that? And what that does is, without the person realizing it, lob the ball back into their court, because now they're thinking, well, how's he going to do this? So now I've engaged them to help me get them out safely.
Excellent. And I love that you can have empathy with somebody even when you don't agree with them, because you'll see that a lot. The most ridiculous scenario being 2 strangers arguing on the internet. And then they get more entrenched and deeper in their position. You don't have to agree. In all likelihood, you're not going to change your view based on some nonsense social media post. But that's a great place to start practicing that understanding. And we can have that with anybody. And that's just by asking more questions. Now, we want to use these techniques with our family members, our toddlers, our teenagers, our elderly parents who we're trying to be a caregiver for. Can you give us some tips here, Terry? Help us.
Yeah. As much as I knew, there was always that episode where you'd go home and your 3-year-old would take the glass of milk and flip it upside down and all over the floor. And everything you knew as a negotiator went right out the window, because the emotional part of it is really, I didn't know you. So I didn't have that emotional connection that you have with your kids, that I had with my daughter and my mom and things like that now. So I guess the big part of understanding, and somehow we've gotten away from this, is that just because I don't agree with you doesn't make you a bad person. And I think in society today, we're at that point where if you don't agree with me, there's something wrong with you, you're bad, and I don't want to have anything to do with you. No, we just don't agree on a particular issue. We can still be friends. We can still care about each other. We can still love each other. So that's important. The other thing I would say, and they always taught us this, and when I first heard this, I thought, this is stupid. They said, whenever you negotiate, smile. And I'm like, smile? I'm 2 blocks away from this person. How are they going to know? I said, no. That smile comes across. We have these neurons in our brain that, like, if I smile at you, your neurons are going to pick that up and you're going to smile back at me. It's involuntary. You're just going to do it. So smile at the person. And the other thing I would say, and this was incredibly important, this is why negotiating was so exhausting, is that we had to get down in the weeds with this person. So in other words, if I was negotiating with you, Jamie, and you were ranting and raving and screaming about your mother, and I said, well, Jamie, you seem a little upset with your mother. I have totally missed the point. No, Jamie, you're pissed as all get out with your mother. You've got to go where that person is. And I would suggest that with your kids, with your spouses, with your parents. Label the emotion and talk about it. Son, you seem upset that you got an F. Well, why do you think I wouldn't use the why. What got you to that F? What did you do that got you to that? Well, I did that. Well, what could you do to maybe get a B or something better? Well, maybe I could do this. Now you're strategizing about that. Don't just blow that off. That emotion doesn't matter. The emotion is really separates us from a lot of the animals. We have that emotion and we use it when we're scared, when we're happy, when we're worried, everything that goes on in our life. So identify the emotion, and it gives the person permission to say, yeah, I'm really ticked at mom because mom did blah, 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 blah. And that's what I wanted. I wanted them to stop using their emotional brain and start using their rational brain, because that's when we could start talking about solutions, putting the gun down, letting the hostage go, coming out. You do that with the rational brain. You do not do that with the person's emotional brain.
Absolutely. The emotional brain hijacks you. I don't know that anyone's ever been like, yeah, I'm so glad I made that choice out of anger. I sent that email or that text or called that person and told them off. And then later they're like, wow, I'm so glad I, did that. Getting out of that. And I like that you talk about, you're really saying stay curious rather than judgmental. So staying out of that judgment, that why, that accusatory, because I feel like if you're bringing those up, and for those of us who are married or in a relationship, I have found, crazy enough, that my partner doesn't like being judged. It's so weird, Terry. I don't know why. He doesn't like it when I tell him how to drive. I'm like, did you know you could go around that truck? And it's so weird that he doesn't love that. Like, I feel like he should be grateful for my expert driving advice. And
especially when you took that course in Indianapolis, right, at the Speedway. So yeah, you know about this, right?
So it's so fascinating that you wouldn't expect these like negotiation, these hostage, high stakes, high stress things, but it's so useful in real life. So get out of that emotional brain, stay curious, understand, even if you don't agree. I certainly don't agree with how my husband loads the dishwasher. That's another hostage situation we could talk about. But those real life things, I'm sure you come across that a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very, I'm very grateful that I had that training, and that because it helped me just in my law enforcement career in general, just dealing with people, being curious, And that was one thing we were always taught: use your curious voice. There was a thing called parroting or mirroring, depending on where you were, that we would let the person talk, and then we would either parrot back to them the most important thing they said or the last three words that they said. But we would do it in a kind of a curious way. So you don't think you could do that, Jamie? But what was important about that is then you had to go silent. You had to be quiet for at least 5 seconds, because as human beings, we don't like silence and we'll fill it. So what we were trying to do by doing that when they stopped talking is to get them talking again. So using the curious voice, giving that kind of, oh, really? You don't think you could do that? On that upswing of your voice, and then going quiet. Because, oh, wait a minute, I don't like this uncomfortableness. I'm going to start talking again. And that's exactly what they would do. And that's exactly what we wanted them to do.
And what I find fascinating about that is when people learn these skills, they say, oh, it's going to be so obvious. People are going to know that I'm mirroring them. Has that been your experience? Or has anyone ever even noticed? Have you done that with even partners that have had the same training?
It's funny because I do it now. If I'll do a pre-call with somebody and I'll just want to practice. And so before I do a podcast, I will do that. They will say something and I will be like, oh, so you do these every Tuesday? And then they'll start talking again and stuff like that. So I do it. I do it just to keep my skills going and stuff like that. I'm not trying to hurt them or embarrass them or anything like that, especially on a pre-call when it's not recorded and things like that. But no. And then there's the whole mirroring thing when you're face to face with somebody. If they cross their legs, you cross your legs. If they put their hands together in a prayer kind of motion, then you do that. If they cross their arms, then you do that. And it's amazing. You're doing the exact same thing they're doing, and they never catch on that you're doing it. But it builds that trust. It builds that, hey, this person gets me. This person, because any relationship you have in your life is predicated on trust. You and your husband, you and your kids, you and your boss, it's all predicated on trust. And one of the things we never did with people is we never lied to them. People would say to us, hey, I'll put the gun down and I'll come out, but you got to promise me I'm not going to go to jail. And we would have to say, well, I'm sorry. When you come out, you are going to go to jail. And then we would try to deflect the conversation to something more palatable. And the reason we never lied, and this happened, is that a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we would be right back negotiating with this person because the problem hadn't gone away. If it was still their mother that got them to this point, mom's still alive, mom's still nagging them. So here we are. And if they ever thought, hey, Terry, you lied to me 2 years ago when we talked, my credibility's done. You're going to have to bring in another negotiator because they do not trust me. Trust is every relationship. You've got to have it. If you don't have it, it's not a good relationship.
Oh, it's not. It's that connection and that trust. Now, how do you feel when we went during the pandemic? And this isn't a commentary about the choices. Things happened, they happened, right? And we were told to distance, and the intention was to physically distance, but in a lot of ways, people did social distancing and got disconnected, got alone. What do you think that did just in general for empathy and communication?
I think that was horrible, but I think the big lesson in it was we're better together than we are by ourselves. You saw during the pandemic, alcoholism rates went up, drug abuse rates went up, divorce rates went up, domestic violence rates went up, because we are not good by ourselves. We need each other to be good. I mean, it's the old axiom about you're the product of the 5 people you hang around with the most. If you don't hang around with 5 people, who are you the product of? You, because there's nobody else to hang around with. So absolutely, I think that showed us how much we need each other, how much we are better together than we ever were separately.
Oh, absolutely. And that connection, whether we're using it to improve our relationships with our kids, with our aging parents, with our significant others, with our boss, and these are all relationships we want to improve.
Yes. Yeah, and it is that connection. There's a woman by the name of Kat Cole. I don't know if you ever heard of her. She started out at Hooters, to be honest with you, and then became the president and CEO of Cinnabon, and now is the president and CEO of Athletic Greens. And she, every month, with her direct reports and her husband, does this 6-question check-in. What's the best thing that's happened in the last 30 days? What's the worst thing that's happened in the last 30 days? What are you most grateful for? What are you most worried about? And the interesting thing about it is It's not a one-way questionnaire. It's okay, if I was reporting to you, you would ask me those 6 questions, and then I would ask you those 6 questions so I would know what's worrying you and what you're grateful for and things like that. And that's what I love about that. It's a mutual kind of questionnaire. It's not like the boss asks you and you got to tell the boss, but the boss doesn't say anything. No. And if you think about that doing with your spouse, every 30 days, it's that check-in. How are things going? What's going right? What's going wrong? What are you worried about? What are you grateful for? Those kind of things in life, we don't do that. But I love that questionnaire that she does. And I think it's something maybe we should all do.
Yeah, that's a brilliant idea. We should all be doing that, checking in with each other, checking in with our friends, our partners, our colleagues. There's a lot of loneliness. There's a lot of isolation right now. And I think that would be a huge help.
Absolutely. And in a working situation, I'm worried because there's my wife found a lump in her breast. Oh, okay. Well, if we don't check in, I may never know that as the boss. It's like, okay, now I know what you're worried about. Now I know what's concerned. Now I know what's going on in your life, and I need to act on that. I need to see how I can support you and help you and things like that. So I think it's just great for all of us to do that kind of check.
I agree that if it helps you understand what people are going through, you might see somebody as not performing well and just assume you create this story in your head that they are lazy or a bad person because you're not in that space of curiosity and they're really going through a terrible divorce or their child was just diagnosed with cancer, and it changes how you approach them.
Absolutely.
I like to reframe it. When somebody cuts you off in a car, right? You can assume that they're just a horrible, evil idiot who's there to ruin your day. But it reminds me of the time that I got a phone call that my nephew was getting active CPR. And so I drove from one hospital to another. And I am confident that I drove like a complete a-hole. I didn't crash into anyone. And I think that all the gods and lucky stars in the world, but who knows how many people I cut off. I'm sure I was just such a jerk. But in that moment, I was trying to get there. And so I tried to give people that space. How do you do that, especially if you don't know the story of the person that's affecting you? Like, how do you frame that?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about before, understanding. As you're driving through traffic, weaving in and out, and everybody's saying, look at that idiot woman, she doesn't know how to drive. If you can take a step back and be like, yeah, but I also don't understand her story. Maybe she's pregnant and her water broke and she's trying to get to the hospital. Or like you said, you've got a nephew who is engaged in active CPR or whatever. You find out your spouse or your parent just had a heart attack. You don't know the story. You don't have the understanding to make a rational judgment. We just naturally jump to, oh, that person's an idiot. And I'll be honest with you, I've done that. I still do that. Absolutely. That person's an idiot. But then I take a step back. It's like, no, Terry, you don't know the story. You don't know what's going on with that individual. And so I guess just be a little kinder. We always talk about being kinder with ourselves. Be kinder with other people as well. We don't need to be jerks all the time. So just step back a little bit. Yeah, maybe that person's having a bad day. Let them have their bad day.
Yeah, hallelujah. If they cut you off, that's the fact. If the story that you ascribe to them is that you're a jerk and it makes you feel bad, it makes your day harder, or the story is you don't know what's going on in their life and it gives you empathy and understanding, it's not just about them, it's about you.
It is. And the other thing you got to think about is everybody's got a gun today. So honking the horn and flashing your lights and flipping them off, you don't want them to stop, pull out a gun and aim it at you. So you know what? It's really not worth it in the scheme of things. So you get there 3 seconds later than you would have otherwise. I've seen that. As a cop and stuff like that, you see the road rage and stuff like that. People are crazy. But
yeah.
Give them the benefit of the doubt and don't put yourself in a situation where now all of a sudden the police or the ambulance are coming to you because they put a bullet through your windshield. So
yeah, no, at this point, I've been an ER doc for so long, and you come at this from a perspective of a cop. If someone wants to cut me off, I just let them.
Yeah.
Like, don't go right ahead.
Works for you.
I am not trying to get in the way. So you came into being an officer, having been a hospital administrator and a business owner, and then in addition to that, learned all these negotiation skills. But what are these administrator skills and the business owner skills that you bring into this knowledge set that you have?
I think one of the biggest things in getting into law enforcement late was the ability to talk to people. And even today, I mean, law enforcement's not a career that really a whole lot of people want to get into today. But every now and then somebody will reach out and they'll be like, what do you suggest? And my number one recommendation is put your devices down and go out on the street and talk to the homeless person. Go up to the penthouse and talk to that person. Because if you can talk to people, you will be successful as a cop. If the only way you can communicate with another person is by texting them a message, you'll be horrible at that job. You'll be frustrated. You won't enjoy it at all. So I got to talk to all kinds of people who were very successful, people mid-management, people working their way up and things like that. Why are you doing this? What did you like? What's going on? And I was able to learn how to talk to all kinds of different people. And that helped me be good as a police officer. And part of that was, I'm just interested in your story. Why did you, I ask every person I'm up on a podcast with, why'd you start your podcast? What made you do that? I love hearing the stories about why people do what they do in their lives. And it's gotten me to the point, I'll give you a quick story. I was connected with a young man on LinkedIn, and he reached out to me and he said, hey, can I call you? I'd like to talk to you. I've got this job offer, or I've got this job interview. It's a sales job. And he was a Division I college football player. And I said, sure, we can talk. So we get on the phone and he starts talking to me about the sales job that he's interviewing for. And I said, before we do that, I said, let me ask you a question. I said, if you could have any job in the world, that job that's in your heart, that's in your soul, what would that job be? And Jamie, without missing a beat, he was like, I'd be a high school football coach. And I said to him, then why are we talking about a sales job? And he said to me, because I got to make money. And I remember hearing a quote, and I'm going to mess it up a little bit. It said, if you don't know your value, if you don't know your purpose, if you don't understand yourself, you will always default to wanting more money. And I love that quote because that's what he was going after. And I said to him, so we talked about the sales job. And I said, when you're finished with the conversation with this individual, call me back. I said, I'd like to hear your impressions. Do you think he's ever called me back? No. Never call me back. Because I think I planted a seed in him that was like, you're going after something that probably isn't going to make you happy long term, where in your heart, it's going to make you happy, and you're not pursuing that.
Yes. And I think that applies to a lot of things. There's that kind of opposite, that advice that people fear that says, pursue your passion and the money will follow. And a lot of people say that's why we've got a bunch of broke people in their 20s. So how can you marry the practicality of that, but also like truly, so people aren't selling their souls and ending up in a place that they don't want? Like, how do you find that good middle ground?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've got a nephew who's a young man, and he and I talked about this, and same thing. It was like, this job's going to pay me, and it was all about money and compensation and stuff like that. And I think that's the problem. And I've seen this, and I'm old, Jamie, so that's why I've seen this. So many people feel that they're born empty, and that when they get out of school and they get into life, whatever that looks like for them, that then their job is to fill their empty self up. They got to get the best education, have the greatest job, making the most money, have the nicest house, have the latest gadgets and gizmos. And what I found is it's just the opposite. We're not born empty. We're born full. We're born with everything we need to be successful already inside of us. We just need to pull it out and use it for our benefit. So when you switch your paradigm, when you switch what you're thinking to, it's not about what I can get, it's about what I can give, then all of a sudden life changes. And I've always said, your life should not be about what you get. Your job should be about emptying yourself out with your unique gifts and talents, certainly for the betterment of yourself, but also for the betterment of your family, of your friends, of your community, of your country. And when you start to look at your life more as, what can I give? How can I support? How can I help other people? All of a sudden, life takes on a whole different meaning than what's the latest gadget I can get, because there's never enough. There's never enough stuff to fill yourself up. There's never enough money. There's always going to be one more thing. But when you give of yourself, the more you give, the more you have inside of you to give to others. It's just an amazing way that I found that my life changed when I changed that paradigm.
Really, because in terms of stuff and possessions, it's a black hole. You could pour into it forever. It's never going to fill. But in your book, Sustainable Excellence, and you talk about this, you share these principles and you live these principles. You're not filling yourself up with the latest gadget and gizmo and nonsense. It's that, like, who you are and this extraordinary life And that is that incredible fulfillment that you're looking for and that you teach people.
Yeah, I spent most of my life doing physical things. I was a college basketball player. I was in law enforcement. I was on SWAT. I did physical things and I enjoyed that and I liked it. And now I had my foot amputated in 2018, my leg amputated in the middle of COVID. I'm in a wheelchair. So how do you balance those things? And what I found is when you can't do what you're good at, you do what's important in life. And nobody cares how many basketball games I won. Nobody cares how many people I locked up or how many tickets I gave. None of that stuff matters. What matters is how can I make a positive difference in people's lives today? And you never know. I'll give you a quick story. When I'm still being treated for tumors that I have in my lungs at an infusion center at the University of Colorado. And there was a nurse. And when I first met her, she was already a nurse. She was about 25 years old, and she was being precepted, learning how to do things on the unit. And about 6 months later, she's taking care of me by herself. And she comes in and she says, Terry, I've got a story I want to tell you, but I don't know how to tell you. And Jamie, I didn't know how to respond to that. I said, well, I hope you decide you want to tell me because I think I might enjoy it. So she's in and out for the next couple hours and then comes in, sits down. She's like, all right, here's the story. She said, when I first met you, I was going to get out of nursing. I had had a good friend of mine die. I was in a really dark place. I talked to my family. I was going to quit nursing. I was going to go to work for Amazon. And she said, and then I met you. And I see everything you go through in your treatments and how you react. And then I went back in your file and I read everything that's happened to you along the way. And she said, when I finished reading your file, I knew I was where I was supposed to be. Now, if she would have never told me that story, I would have had no idea that my life had such a positive impact on her. I guarantee that the people that are listening to us right now, there are people out there watching how you deal with your adversity, watching the courage and everything that you put into making that work, and would give almost everything they have just to walk 5 minutes in your shoes. So understand that I know it seems like it's terrible now, but you are making a difference in people's lives that you may never meet or may never know.
Oh, oh my gosh. All right. I know everybody listening has goosebumps. I definitely do. It's so important. It goes back to the why she is doing that. And now she is going, I mean, nursing is an incredible profession, very life-saving, very altering. She got to experience her why in seeing it in a patient. In your whole journey, you were in business and you were in hospital administration, and your why was doing something that helped you stay connected with your father and not going against his wishes, and then taking the opportunity to pursue your dreams in law enforcement and SWAT and all those amazing things. That why was still with you. And so how did you bring that now into this cancer journey?
Yeah, I go back to my father. My father died in the 1980s of end-stage breast cancer, which back then they really didn't know how to treat a man with breast cancer. And they told him pretty much to go home and die. And he lived another 3.5 years. And I believe he did because he had a purpose. He was in real estate. He loved real estate. He actually worked up till 2 weeks before he died. And I tucked that in the back of my mind and said, you know, when it's my turn in the barrel, I'm going to need to have that purpose. I'm going to need to have something to do. Otherwise, I'm going to sit around and watch Netflix all day long, eat bad food, and think how terrible my life is. So when you flip that switch and say, okay, how can I use this ugliness? How can I use this pain for the betterment of myself, of my family, of the people that I come in contact with? Now all of a sudden I've got a purpose, and I'm treated for an entire week at the hospital, and then I get 2 weeks off. And it's during these 2 weeks that I do podcasts and I write and I do all these kind of things. And my wife and I will go back and forth. She's like, you need to rest. You need to get your blood counts up. You need to do all this. I'm like, I get plenty of rest when I'm dead. It's like this energizes me. This gives me purpose. This makes me feel better. And I don't know why. I hope it's because I'm giving of myself with the understanding that I'm not looking for anything back. I'm not looking for you to go buy my book or take my course or doing anything like that. It's just I've learned some things along the way. I don't have all the answers, but I've learned some things. And I would like to offer them to other people in the hope that maybe what you're going through it would make a positive difference in your life.
Oh, it is. It's life-giving. What you're doing and sharing it, it is that principle that you talked about it in giving from yourself. You are giving right now. You are sharing your energy with the world, but at the same time, it's revitalizing and healthy for you because it's you in your highest and best purpose.
It is. And I've always said, I've probably done more living in the 12 years that I've been dying of cancer than I've done in my entire life. And I've had a pretty good life up till the point I got cancer. So I think that says something about what I'm doing, or at least trying to do at this point in my life.
Yes, I know. I feel like you've had so many lives. I love reading your bio because it could easily be about several different people, but it's that's what makes you so uniquely you. So for our listeners who have had the privilege to see you live or have heard you on other podcasts and platforms or done your courses, you are so consistent. Like you live who you are. This is the era where people are trying to make a quick buck and there's fake gurus and they come up with this whatever, but they don't have that consistency. You have that through this span of a career, and to see that and to see the purpose and the message and that famous Terry Tucker energy come through. Like, who is this energetic when they're going through cancer treatment, Terry? Honestly, you're superhuman.
But it does. But what I said before is true. This really does energize me because it gives me that purpose. It's like, yeah, last week was terrible, but you know what? That's last week. And there's nothing I can do about the past. I can only focus on the present. And you and I talked before we started, having that collaborative relationship with my doctor, with my oncology pharmacist, with my nurses and things like that. It is a collaborative relationship. I want my life based on the decisions that I made, not the ones I didn't make or that somebody else made for me. So I want to be an active participant. I'm sure sometimes my oncologist wants to hit me over the head with a 2x4, but at the same time, he, for 10 years and now the new one that I have, they are great. There's nothing that I feel that I can't talk to them about.
Excellent. Well, and I think that collaboration, I ring that bell in healthcare all the time, in that it should be collaborative. It's my expertise and it's your body. And those things need to come together. I'm an expert in emergency medicine. You're an expert in you. You have lived in your body your entire life. And
Right.
so you happen to know it better than your doctor ever will. Crazy thought, right?
I mean, it is funny because I've had people say that to me, but it's funny. I had a hematoma, or what they thought was a hematoma, on my ankle. And I remember I went in to see my surgeon. He got called away. So the resident was there, and you'll appreciate this as a doctor. And he's looking at he's like, I'm going to drain that. And it was in my ankle. And I looked at him and I said, I don't think that would be a good idea. And he's like, no, I'm going to drain it. And thank God the guy was in scrubs, because he put a little Novocaine in or lidocaine in, and he put the needle in and he drew back on the syringe and all this blood came out. And then he disconnected the syringe from the needle and left it in. And it looked like a fountain. It shot all over him, all over the walls, all over the floor.
Oh, you got a murder scene going on.
And I'm just laughing. It's like, I told you not to do that. And I remember my surgeon came back and said, yeah, these residents need to learn that when patients tell them something, they need to pay attention to that. Because as you said, we know our bodies. And I've been doing this for a long time. I've been dealing with cancer for a long time. I know what's going to work. And I can tell you, yeah, that's not going to work if you do that. And I don't, it was a great learning experience for him. I'm so glad he wasn't in a suit when he did that, because I would have ruined his suit. But at the same time, it was, listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. You want to do it, go ahead. So anyway, just a funny story.
Oh, no, and I think those are important lessons. And I've certainly had my share of humble moments as a physician that helped me learn. And all those lessons go back to listen to the person you're talking to.
Exactly. But that goes back to what we were talking about before about understanding. Try to understand that person, whether you're a physician, whether you're a police officer, whether you're just meeting somebody on the street.
Oh my gosh, that lesson is so good. Terry, there is somebody who is listening to this right now who is in struggle. They are maybe having some dark thoughts. They don't know what's going to happen next. They're in fear. They're struggling with self-care in that space of trying to take care of everybody else. And so I want you to share a message to this person. You've been through struggle. You've been through dark places. You've seen these high stress things From your heart and your experience, what could you share with this person who's struggling?
So I'm going to tell you a story. True story. Happened back in the 1950s at Johns Hopkins University. There was a professor there by the name of Richter who wanted to do an experiment. And this experiment was with rats. He wanted to see how long rats could tread water. So he put rats in a tank of water that was over their head. And the average rat treaded water for about 15 minutes. And just as those rats were getting ready to sink and drown, he reached in, grabbed them, pulled them out, dried them off, and let them rest for a while. And then he took the exact same rats and put them back in that exact same tank of water. And the second time around, on average, those rats treaded water for 60 hours. Now think about that. 15 minutes. It's not like you're going to flunk a test or your business is going to go under. You're going to die. Your life is going to be over. And the second time around, 60 hours, which taught me two things. Number one, the importance of hope in our lives. That if we know we're doing the right thing, I know things seem dark. I know things seem gloomy and you're never going to get out of this pit. But I promise you, if you're doing the right things, it's not 100%, but somewhere down the road, maybe not today, maybe not this month, maybe not even this year, but at some point in time, you will get to where you want to be, more than likely. And the second thing it taught me was we all have a breaking point. But that breaking point is so much further down the road than you ever thought it was. We end up getting in trouble because we can't control our minds. Things get uncomfortable. Things hurt. I'm a little sore. And your brain kicks in. It's like, hey, knock this off. Stop this. Stop doing what you're doing. Think about a marathon runner. What do they always say? They get to a point where they hit that wall. I can't go on. I can't do this. It hurts. I'm cramping up. But if you can push through that ugliness, if you can push through that pain, what do they always tell you? I got a second wind. I got something on the other side of that pain. Pain is there for a reason. Fear is a good thing. My partner and I used to always talk to each other. We said, if we were going to a noise run, somebody said, I called because my neighbors got their TV up. That's an innocuous run. That's not something it's no big deal. Knock on the door, please turn your TV down, have a nice day, goodbye. But if one of us said, you know what, going to that run, I got a bad feeling about this. We didn't dismiss that. We took that to heart and said, okay, tactically, we're going to be very sound on how we approach this building, how we approach the door, and what we do when we contact that person. Because your body has that built-in mechanism, that sort of self-preservation mode where it's going to keep you safe. I remember hearing that, I think it was the National Science Foundation said, 80% of our thoughts are negative. And they're negative because it's a self-preservation mode. It's your brain telling you, Jamie, if you got up this morning and said, I'm going to go skydiving, your brain would be like, oh, wait a minute, Jamie, the parachute may not open, the plane might crash. It would be all the negative things. It wouldn't be, sure, Jamie, have a great time. I think you'd enjoy yourself. It would be your brain trying to keep you safe, trying to keep you alive. So we all have fear. Don't understand that we all have fear. They always say a hero is somebody who's braver for 5 minutes longer than everybody else. So understand you have that fear, but use that fear. Take that pain, take that ugliness, throw it inside of you, burn it as fuel, use it as energy to make you stronger and more resilient.
Oh my gosh. Okay, everybody, when you are struggling, you need to replay that. We need to create that as a soundbite specifically, and people can play that as a mantra. That was so amazing. I already feel a part 2 coming on because we have so much more to talk about and we want to follow your journey. So I know that you are the last person here who wants to hawk your book and courses and stuff like that, but people want to know where to find you. So where can they find you when they're looking for inspiration? They want more. What's the best way to interact with you?
So I have a blog/website called Motivational Check. Every day I put up a thought for the day. And with that thought usually comes a question about how maybe you could apply that thought into your life. I have recommendations for books to read, videos to watch. You can leave me a message. That's all at motivationalcheck.com.
Awesome. And we'll put that in the show notes. Everybody stay tuned for your key takeaways and your free gift. Terry, thank you. Your time is so incredibly valuable. Your words are so incredibly valuable. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here today and bringing us some more hope.
Well, Jamie, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed talking with you today.
Thank you for tuning into Navigating Hope with me, Dr. Jamie Hope. It has been an honor to navigate the realms of health and wellness with you today. Remember, in the journey toward a healthier life, knowledge is your compass. If you enjoyed our time together, please share, like, and subscribe to Navigating Hope. Join us next week where we'll continue to empower your health journey, arming you with the wisdom to navigate life's challenges and keep the emergency room in your rearview mirror.